Alright friends, welcome into the shop. So in this video we're going to be building a kind of side table, occasional table, could have multiple names. It's a table I've built 4 or 5 times for a local interior designer here. Now this video is sponsored by my good friends over at Simply Safe. Remember, there is no safe like Simply Safe. As I mentioned in the title, this table is going to have some serious issues. I'm not going to tell you what they are. We're going to go through the video here and discuss that at the end. So I'll give you the opportunity to kind of try to pinpoint and figure out where the problem is with this table. So I'm starting on the CNC. There's quite a bit of work for the top on the CNC. It's a 36-inch round table, and it has a little lip on it. So what we're going to do is first we're going to secure it to the tabletop. I use screws and the vacuum table, which actually vacuums this piece down. But the screws are kind of added security to make sure that it doesn't lift off the table. So we'll start with the outside profile. Don't get discouraged if you're not into CNCs. There's plenty of hand tool work in this coming later in the video. So we're starting with this 36-inch profile on top. I'm not going to cut this all the way through. We're going to cut about halfway through, and then we're going to stop and move on to the next tool path. And the reason for that I'll actually probably explain later in the video. This material is all rift sawn white oak. I'm changing out the tooling here. I'm going to go from this 3/8 spiral down cut bit to a 2 1/4 surfacing bit. So we're going to use this bigger bit here to actually remove a 1/4 inch of a material off the top of the table, and we're going to leave a little 3/8 to 1/4 inch lip around the outside. It's just kind of a cool little detail. It kind of relieves the tabletop down. Nice look to it. And so we use this big surfacing bit, which takes roughly a 1/16 on each pass. So it's a little bit of work to get this material taken off, and it does it kind of in a spiral pattern. So it's going to take 4 or 5 passes here to get it knocked all the way down. Okay, so while we're doing this carving, let's take a second to talk about today's sponsor, Simply Safe. Simply Safe's award-winning home security system is designed with cutting-edge technology and powered by 24/7 professional monitoring. The system uses state-of-the-art cameras for both outdoor and indoor use, and these cameras are one of my favorite parts of the system. Now, if you have a family like me, you've probably taken some trips over the summer. We've been to Florida and to Colorado in the last couple months, which means we've been away from our home for a while. We have 5 cameras set up in our system, 3 outdoor cameras and 2 indoor cameras. We also have Simply Safe's automatic lock that works off a keypad. Now the best thing about the cameras is I can monitor my property 24/7 from the app. I get notifications if there's any movement from the camera. If anyone shows up to my property, someone comes to my front door, I immediately get notified on the app so I can see who's at my house while I'm away in another state. Now with that in mind, I can control the entire system from the app. I can arm and disarm. I can open the door, unlock the door using the smart lock.
Please exit
I can also
now.
provide the code to my family members so they can know how to get in through the side door using the smart lock. I just love having this system on my home while I'm out of town. Now the good news is Simply Safe is offering my viewers 20% off when you sign up for a Fast Protect monitoring plan, and you get your first month free. Just visit simplysafe.com/Andy Rawls. Remember, there's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, a big thanks to Simply Safe for sponsoring the channel. Let's get back into this build. Okay, so we've got the relief cut in the top. We've taken that 1/4 inch of material off. Now we're going to come back and make a nice little transition from that outside perimeter lip to the actual surface that we've taken down in the center of the table. We're going to use this tool here that we just put on. It's kind of a little bull nose. It just has that little round over that we're going to have the machine trace right around the outside profile. You can get a close shot here of what that looks like. Just a nice clean transition. Looks really cool. It's a nice looking table. Now there's quite a bit of sanding to do at this point to get all those tool marks out, but the CNC does a pretty darn good job of getting this profile all created. So we get it off the CNC, we're at the workbench now. We're going to use our jigsaw to just cut off the waste, and then we'll come back with a flush trimming bit and make that edge all nice and clean. that really takes care of all the CNC work for this piece, just basically the top. We create all of this in about 30 minutes using the CNC on the top. This piece is kind of almost like a chair, right? It's got spindles underneath, and this construction that I'm working into, I learned all this making Windsor chairs way back in the days, like 2007, 2008 time frame with Frank Straus's. So this is just a block I created as a jig to drill the holes. Just helps get everything straight. Angles are very challenging. If you're off by half a degree or even more so a degree, it really compounds and shows up on a table leg or a chair leg. So, you know, the little jig here is going to help me get things lined up, help me make sure I'm holding my drill at the proper angle. But as you're going to find out when we get further along in this process, there's a lot of hand skill in this, because we're going to come back and ream these holes with an auger brace and bit, and that can really change the angle a lot. And you can see on my jig there, I've got 7-degree drill jig, and I've actually changed that to 9 since the last time I built this. I'll put a little bit more splay into it. I think it looks a little bit better. The 7 degrees just wasn't enough splay for my liking. Okay, so here's the reamer. Basically, the reamer is just going to it's going to enlarge the hole and taper it. I bought this reamer years ago, when, like I said, when I was making Windsor chairs, and I still get opportunities on tables and occasionally on chairs to use it. You can see here, you might notice that I've got some bandaging on my hand. I thoroughly messed it up pretty good. If you want to know more about that, you can head on to the Patreon. I included that in the shop update. It's a pretty gnarly injury. Probably, honestly, one of the worst ones I've had in the shop. I'm quite lucky I didn't do more damage to my hand than what I ended up doing. So the process with the reamer, you can see here I've got a test piece, and I just kind of slowly work this and check it. Now, if you look there, you can see I'm slightly off to my angle. I've got 2 different bevels I'm working here. I've got one full-length bevel, and then one that I've cut shorter that I can use while I'm reaming, because obviously I'm using a brace and bit here, and it just knocks that bevel over. The reamer cuts quick, and it can change the angle really easily. So there's a certain level of skill you have to get accustomed to do this well. And it just takes time. You see my angle's looking pretty good, but you also, it's not in the shot, but you also got to consider not just the splaying angle, but the side-to-side angle. There's a lot of factors here we're working with to try to keep this perfectly in line on our 9-degree splay. By the way, that's Jeremiah there. He's part-time helping me in the shop, doing an awesome job, helping me get caught up on the schedule, and I've appreciated having his help. I really enjoy this type of work. Just you know, the challenge of getting it right, taking your time, making sure the angles are all lined up. It's really satisfying when you do 4 of these and you sight them and they're all pretty well lined up. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but it feels good when you get it right. All right, so with the holes reamed, we go to the lathe, and we're going to turn the tenon on the legs. So the legs are square up until the point that they go into that tapered hole. So basically we're just turning a tapered tenon on the end of the leg. So I start by sizing it down on the very end of the leg, and then we're going to start shaping the taper. I've got a spindle gouge here, just roughing with it. And then I'll get a finer, smaller gouge to really get in there and make that scoop. Make a nice clean transition here from square part to round. I'm going to use a block here in a second to test my taper. Basically just a piece of wood that I drilled out or reamed out just like we did previously, and then I took it to the bandsaw and split it right down the middle, and I can use that to dial in the shape of my taper, because you want to make sure that this fits exactly what the angles of that reamer, or else you're not going to seat this well, and it's not going to be a good joint. This is a little 1-inch wide scraper that I find very useful. It's the width of it helps me keep a nice straight clean line on that taper, so there's no scoop or anything to it. It's just a good straight line. Do a little sanding to clean up tool marks. Last check here, and if I showed it better, that piece really gets stuck on there pretty well. There's more info on this table again on my Patreon. You can really kind of see how those joints, how strong they are. Once you seat one, it's really hard to get them apart. Okay, so the next step here is to drill for spindles. I've got Jeremiah helping me hold this. There's better ways to do this. If I was making chairs on a regular basis, I would probably get, for one, a better drill bit and some better tooling to help line this up. But if you're in a pinch and you're just doing one-off here, this little laser level works great. You can line it up on the drill, and you're just basically keeping that drill on a perfectly level plane and in line with the leg it's across from it, and it works. You can make it work pretty good. It's a brushless. Something's coming out of that drill in my eyes.
That's the brushes, man. They're just worn out.
Woo. Okay, so the legs have a few little details. It's a round over on the outside and then a bead detail there on the inside edges. Now I want to just mention that this is a design from the interior designer, so I'm just in this instance creating what she wants, and I do that a lot. That's part of my business, and I enjoy that sometimes. Sometimes it's hard, but this particular table I enjoy it. And that little bead detail, we run it on the router table, and then I just clean it up with that block plane to make it nice and smooth. I'm laying out here for wedges, so I want to dry some of the legs, mark for my wedges, and then we're going to take those legs over to the bandsaw, and we'll cut a curve to accept a wedge in that leg, so when we assemble it, that adds some added strength, keeps those legs from pulling out of the top. And I'll follow that off by cutting 4 wedges off the end of this piece of walnut. Nothing fancy here, just eyeball them. It's easy to do. Just get yourself 4 taper pieces. Now for assembly, I'm going to use epoxy, just slow setting, gives me plenty of time to get all the parts aligned. This is a tricky glue up because we gotta basically assemble this undercarriage first. So once we get it all put together, and then try to get it to seat in the table, which that can be tricky as well. You see I'm struggling a little bit with it. And what helps is to just put it on the floor and get on top of it. Use your body weight to kind of help seat those parts. And then once you send the wedges in, they're not coming out. They're locked in. So here's a good close-up of how that wedge goes in. You can listen to it. The sound of the hammer will tell you when that wedge is seated and doesn't need to go any further. If you take it too far, it's a good chance you're going to break the wedge. Okay, so glue dries, we cut the wedges off. A little bit awkward angle here, and I still haven't leveled the leg, so we're rocking a little bit. I'm basically just gonna saw off these 4 wedges. You could use a hand plane to level these. Probably going to get some hate from some hardcore enthusiasts, but I'm just going to pull out the angle grinder with a little abrasive tooling on it and just take these down real quick. This works well. And plus there's epoxy in there, and I try to keep, epoxy will dull a hand plane really fast, and it can scratch the sole. So try not to do that, especially with my nice hand planes. This will get it really close, and then we can finish it up with a hand plane and a card scraper. Okay, the final detail is just a little round over on the outside edge of the table. There's really no way to easily get a router on it with a router bit, and I like using spoke shaves, so this is an easy, quick way to do it. Just work around and put a nice little radius on that edge. A real quick look there at that really nice cedar top. We recently delivered this table. This one did not make it in a video, but it did make it over on the Patreon update. So if you want to learn about it, head on over there. I'm putting stain on this. So we're going to stain this, add a little color. This is general finish stain. It's a dye stain. And when I stain, I just kind of take it one part at a time. So I'm going to do a leg, maybe add a spindle, and then wipe that stain off really good, and then move on to the next part. I don't try to stain the whole thing, the whole undercarriage, and then come back and wipe off. I do it in sections. So I'll wipe all that off, and then we're going to do the bottom of the tabletop, and then flip it over and obviously do the top. the table is all complete. We got it all finished up. Now, the question is, what is actually wrong with this table? Now, if you look back not far towards the end of this video, when I was grinding away those wedges, you could kind of see that was the telltale shot. This top has a pretty good bow in it. And you can even see it probably in this frame, a little bit of a kind of a curve here. The outsides are sticking up high. So I've built about 5 of these tables for the same clients, interior designer who kind of came to me with this idea. She had found an antique that she really liked, and she wanted me to kind of recreate it. And this is a lot like what that piece looked like. And this is the 5th one, like I said, and I've had this same problem on all 5. I've not been able to figure it out. Now, if you go back to the very opening shot of this video, you might notice that I'm screwing the top down onto the CNC bed. I'm trying to fully secure it flat onto that bed because the vacuum pump can't even hold it. Once we start removing material off this top, it loses the tension and the wood gets released, and that top every time will bow a little bit. I think one top has stayed fairly flat on me, and I've had multiple tops that I've had to discard and throw out because they actually bowed, lifted off the table. This is before I was screwing it onto the table, and as that top lifts and bows, the tooling stays on the same plane, and it ruins the top because it's going to cut deeper where it's lifted off the table into the workpiece and ruin it. I think a couple ideas I have floating around, and I'd love to get a comment on this. I'm sure there's some people out there with some great ideas, some thoughts on a way to mitigate the movement. Or it's not even necessarily movement, the release of tension. And the key to this is this little lip detail along the top. That's what she really likes and wants. So to create that, I've been removing material, obviously. Now instead, on the next one, what I'm going to try to do is lay up a veneered top. So we'll put it on a plywood core, veneer the top and bottom. It'll be stable, no wood movement at all, and then we can do an applied trim around the outside to get that lip, to get that look. You couldn't do that with solid. Some people might argue that you can, but I would never do it because solid obviously is going to shrink and swell. Wood is hygroscopic, meaning that it takes on moisture from the environment, the relative humidity around it, and as it pulls that moisture into the fibers of the wood, those expand a lot like a sponge would, and it moves. And it does the exact opposite when that moisture goes out of the atmosphere. It gets removed from the cells of the wood, and the wood shrinks. So it's always moving, and if you build outside the parameters of allowing for that movement, you'll have failure. And applying banding around a solid wood piece eventually is going to, there's going to be an issue there somewhere. The banding's going to pop. Something's going to happen. You're going to have gaps between the banding and the top. If it shrinks, it's going to open up these gaps, and you're going to be able to see right through the banding. So there's really no better way to do the applied banding other than a veneer here, stable top, and just apply it around the outside. Now the other idea, and this is a tip of the hat to Jeremiah, who's been helping me. You saw him in this video, is potentially add some bracing down under here. Some steel bracing of some sort that would help hold it flat, and that's something I might try. The challenge I see with that is we're only an inch thick here in the core of the table, so you're not going to get a lot up in there. I could maybe do an angle iron and put it like a V, and the V would be down, and that would add some stiffness and stability. It might be worth a shot. We'll see. I think the next go around I'm going to try the veneer and see how that goes for me. But for this table, this is out of all of my build, it's got probably the most significant amount of just kind of movement. And when you get it down on the ground, you don't notice it. You're not on eye level with it. But regardless, it's there, and the client is going to catch it. So for something like this, what I'll generally do is I'll offer either a discount on the table, or I'll offer to rebuild it. And I'll keep this one and do something with it. And if I rebuild, I generally will ask that they be willing to jump into the backlog. Not all the way to the very back. I wouldn't do that, but somewhere in there where I can find a little open window to build it. So, and in the meantime, they can hold on to this one and have a little bit of a bowed top. That's where we're at. It happens. This is woodworking. This is furniture making. It's not easy. Real quick before we shut the video down, I want to share the finishing because you saw me staining there at the end of the video. What I do for the finish on this is after I stain, it's an oil-based stain from General Finishes. This actually gets sealed with a seal coat. It's a shellac sealer. I love that product. You can put it over anything, you can seal it, and then you can put anything back over the top of it. It's kind of a barrier coat. I use water-based top coats, and if you stain with oil-based and then you spray water-based, you can get into real bad adhesion issues where the finish just peels off. The only way around that is to either seal it and put this barrier coat like I do, or wait a week or more for that oil-based stain to really fully dry and be gone. And then you can shoot anything you want over at that point. So the shellac went on. I did add a little bit more stain to the top. There was 2 boards right in here that are a little bit darker, so I taped those off and then just kind of glazed the rest of it to kind of even out that color. Worked great. Shot another coat of shellac on it, just real light coat just on the top to seal off that glaze I did. And then I put on 3 coats of Target Coatings conversion varnish with a satin sheen. A really nice looking finish. A really cool looking table, a great little occasional table. And before we leave, thanks to SimpliSafe for sponsoring, and thanks to the Patreons who help support the channel. There's some behind the scenes content on this table over there on Patreon. Also, if you want to know what happened to my hand, which got pretty messed up about 3 weeks ago, that's on the Patreon as well. So you can support me there, or you can order a t-shirt, support me that way, or just leave a comment and give me a thumbs up. That's all I need. Subscribe. Until next time, I appreciate you guys tuning in.